So what I wanted to go over today, signature systems. Just an idea. You don't have to call it your signature system. To me, it's kind of hokey. But the underlying premise here is that you have a procedure, a protocol, if you will, that you believe and then test will lead to the positive outcomes that you're looking for with your specific clients. This allows you to actually improve and measure client results, and also allows you to distinguish yourself in a very crowded marketplace. As you guys, I think, are implicitly aware, your success is correlative to the results with clients that you're able to get. Obviously, your system is not going to be a guarantee that the outcomes will 100% manifest themselves, but it does allow you to improve consistency across outcomes across clients. So I don't want you guys to take this idea too far, but for play, just for the sake of play, you're only as successful as your last client. So don't take that to an extreme, but just be aware that your client's ability to achieve success is correlated to yours. What we also are able to do with a signature system is to start to understand and create an experience that people can step into. Also, obviously, as I mentioned, will allow you to achieve more consistent, improved results across the board. Why is that? For one thing, checklist manifesto style, having a checklist that you're running people through, turns out, is pretty useful. Having a system that you've defined implies that you can then refine it as you have people go through it and you get some feedback. It also allows you to create stability within sessions and in between sessions. So rather than becoming unsure about a certain direction to go with a particular client, this allows you to sidestep that issue and stay out of the zone of winging it, which sometimes can be creatively awesome and sometimes super not. This allows you at least have a choice of the path that you're going to take. Are you going to follow the prescribed, or maybe you get an intuition that you should go a different direction, but at least you have something you're sort of pivoting away from. Also just allows you to make sure that you don't miss critical parts of the thing that you're working on. So for example, if you're working on weight loss for clients, perhaps it just escapes your brain that you never talk to this person in front of you about protein because you do this a lot. And so sometimes we forget who we've talked to about what. This allows you to kind of be aware and not miss things that are going to lead to their success. So what we're going to cover today: what's a signature system, what it's not, benefits of having one, which we've already started talking about, how to create. So again, the document that I put in the chat, not a this week thing, but a like think in these terms thing. And then obviously questions at the end. So just show of hands, does anybody have a current system that they run everybody that they work with through? Okay, cool. No worries. Many people just sort of rely on a pure coaching approach where, you know, you open the session up to the client, go all the directions the client wants to go, and you're really not providing any sort of structure layered in. Other people have sort of a mix. They're relatively free flow, but they're running through a basic procedure on some level. And some people have one that's super mapped out. So I think there's a lot of reasons why a person might want to have a system. as I mentioned, helps you not forget important pieces. When you're interacting with a fair number of people, it can be easy to forget that you haven't talked to so-and-so about such and such. This is going to directly impact their ability to be successful. It also allows you to have a reference point that you can superimpose upon wherever a client is at. So you can be rather flexible with it, even having a system. Obviously, also what we track improves. If we don't have a system, it's difficult to track and therefore improve. So a really great example, Marie Kondo's link that I put in the chat is just an example. So she's not really just offering non-specific advice. She has a very specific step-by-step approach that allows her to build confidence. Interesting point, in terms of books. Books are actually I'm not suggesting that anyone needs to write a book, but just thinking this through. Books are actually a really interesting way for people to define their signature system, because they don't have the luxury of sitting down with somebody and coaching them through a problem. They have to understand the problem at such a high level that they can reasonably anticipate what will work and whatever obstacles a person would commonly kind of interact with trying to solve the problem. The system is something that allows you to define a point A where a person will start in your system, and then a point B, and that's their desired outcome. Also has the clear steps that allow you to kind of interact with and overcome the obstacles. And what I think is actually the most important part of this, and if there is something I want you to take away this week from this, it's based on a person's, the author's or yours, in your guys' case, philosophy. So this is, in other words, my encouragement to have an opinion, have a point of view on the issue that you're trying to combat. For Marie Kondo, she doesn't just say, organize for this, organize this room, then this room, this room. What she's really helping you organize around is this principle of sparking joy. And that's how you determine what you keep and what you don't keep. So in other words, her point of view or her philosophy is that this joy principle is the most important thing to organize around if you're trying to solve a clutter issue. Got a little ahead of myself there, but again, clear philosophy. She's got specific rules. So she doesn't say, go in all of your rooms independently and gather your clothes. What she would like you to do is bring all of your clothes to one location, dump them, and then sort. She also has a sequence through which she runs you. So she starts you with clothes, which she says is the easiest. You might have a different point of view, but she ends with sentimental items because these are typically the hardest to get rid of. So signature systems actually are not just the program that you're running a person through. They can be a methodology that you can break into offers, books, programs, retreats. So they're very high level in terms of, especially in terms of your philosophy. Again, Marie Kondo is the joy principle. They allow and encourage us having these to have a strong point of view, which I know can be very challenging for us as human beings. However, it also is what allows you to get somebody to say yes or a no. If we can't get somebody to a yes or a no, we probably haven't taken a strong enough point of view for them to know if they want to do something in terms of moving forward. So it is on some level our obligation to have enough of a point of view that somebody can figure out, is this for me or is it not for me? Another thing that it is something that you've created. So in other words, you're obviously, you can't just take the heroic protocol and say that that's your protocol. You want to be able to iterate on other ideas that you've consumed, digested, and metabolized. Some of the things that make having a system, doesn't have to be super involved, but having a system that you're working with allows you to differentiate yourself, which once you guys are doing a certain amount of marketing, you're going to want to be able to pull people in and repel people rather quickly, rather than just being in a position where you're putting out content where nothing happens. That's pretty much where we don't want to be. We want to either be pulling in and repelling, pulling in and repelling. And the only way we can really do that is through differentiation. As I mentioned, helps you get more reliable outcomes. You can incorporate what you think in terms of your system, which is a representation of your point of view on how a problem should be solved, into your marketing. It also allows clients to relax. And I think this is probably, for me, the most important piece. When a person feels and knows that there's a plan that they're following with steps that a person on the other side of the exchange has determined are the easiest and most straightforward ways for them to achieve such and such thing, they're allowed to relax a little bit more, which is pretty much the reason they hired you in the first place. They needed to have that level and infusion of confidence. It's very difficult to give somebody that without a system. Also, scalability. This is what allows you to work with more people more quickly, more efficiently. In terms of differentiating yourself, what you're really looking for is not a different problem to solve, but a problem to solve differently. It's a huge opportunity to really flex your creative muscle in such a way that you're able to define a unique and novel approach that is exciting for somebody to consider. For me, this is one of the, things that I really love most about doing this, is the ability to do all that digesting of complexity in order to iterate and come up with something that actually can move somebody more quickly towards the desired outcome. It also allows you to, well, it allows your clients, or potential clients rather, the opportunity to decide if they like your approach. So if you don't have an approach outlined, it can be very difficult for somebody sitting on the other side of the conversation to determine if that's something they like. For me, it's almost like an ethical imperative to have some of this mapped out so that you can provide that point of contact intellectually for a person that you're interested in working with. It also becomes part of your brand. So for me, you can probably notice that I'm not Alex Hormozy and I don't approach it in such a way, right? So for you guys, this becomes part of the brand that you represent. Creating those reliable outcomes for clients, obviously super important. For you, having predictability in client results can make a huge difference in your experience in running this thing. There's already a lot of uncertainty in this process from our perspective. Having that predictability for us is a huge advantage because it also allows us to relax into doing what we do best. I guess I was really concerned when I wrote this about people forgetting steps, because I think this is the third time it's come up, but helps you not skip steps, allows you to measure progress. Also, interestingly, when clients start to experience issues, you can identify what might be going on versus might be going on with them based on your signature system. So what comes up a lot is you start to notice people skipping steps and then having issues. So you have something to bring somebody back to, which again allows them to reinvest in the process, to understand the value of doing such and such thing. It allows you to intervene much more adeptly than if you don't have a system and you're kind of just shooting an arrow in the dark. Obviously, opportunities to refine as well once we start tracking what's going on, how people are responding. Everything that you include in your signature system then becomes stuff that you can create marketing pieces around. So if you've ever sat down to do content creation and came up with some blanks, this can really help. You can review what you do with folks, pull out the most interesting and compelling pieces of that, and create content. This is also useful when you are having sales conversations. It's very challenging, again, if you don't have a system that you're working from, however unrefined. It's very challenging to present to somebody something that they could buy when it's that big. So for me, again, it feels almost like a ethical issue to make sure that I'm presenting something that to a certain person could be valuable rather than kind of leaving them in space. I think I covered this one, so I'll go back. I'm just going to read this one point because I think it is important. Otherwise, this is a little bit redundant. Having a system like this allows you to create an experience where the people you're serving don't have to figure out what they're going to talk to you about every week, which frankly might be cool for them for a couple of weeks. But after a couple of weeks, they're going to wonder, since they chose to work with you, it implies that they're having some level of issue. When they start, when they're required to self-direct week after week after week, they're going to start to experience some confusion about whether they're even on the right path, because they actually came to you to help them figure out what that path is. So I think that's a really important aspect of it as well. It's great to open it up for self-direction, but we don't want to place the burden of directing the engagement on the person we're serving. Scalability. So if you do choose to write a book, this is something that will be very useful to you. Online courses. So part of what we're doing in terms of creating online coursework, this is essentially all the stuff that you wish your ideal clients knew before sitting down to talk to you that would make your coaching that much more effective. Consider building that into your signature system. Also super useful if you get invited to speak. You won't have to reinvent the wheel every single time somebody asks you if you'd like to speak. You can pick out pieces of the system, the whole system, the system as applies to problem A. So it does create a higher degree of efficiency in terms of workload over time. One important note that I just wanted to make, you don't always necessarily have to have it be steps. So Atomic Habits is an example of a signature system that allows people to pick and choose. He basically has different buckets to choose from. in terms of habit formation, and a person can apply that in a way that feels like what am I trying to say? Rather than going step 1, 2, 3, 4, a person checks in and says, my scenario is a little bit more like this, so I'm going to look at this section of this signature system. So you can do it that way as well if you want to be a little bit more flexible. Steps to creating such a thing. Our favorite thing is number 1, having the niche. This helps us create a system. Otherwise, we are, again, sort of standing at the edge of the Pacific Ocean trying to organize it, right? That's a really big task. So we want to have something that's theoretically at least organizable. Second step is articulating a point of view. And this is, again, really what I want to impress upon you today is how do you develop your unique perspective on how you should solve a given problem? So permission slip to have an opinion on the thing that you care about is here for you today. Next step, obviously, we need to know the obstacles that are in the way of a person solving such a thing. And create the steps. So you'll see in the worksheet that I put in that I hope you will kind of revisit as time progresses and you get some iterations. Identifying the audience you're working with, what their problem is, and establishing point A, point B. You can use the format I help, put into brackets who you help and what you help with. It's really that simple to begin with. So if you feel like you can't answer those 2 questions, that would be the place to start. Again, this is not a marriage. This is the problem that you're going to solve right now. If in 6 months you're like, I think that problem's really stupid and I don't care anymore, then you don't have to do that. What I'm encouraging you to do is be intense in the moment. Allow yourself to be compelled in the moment without attachment to this being a lifelong pursuit that you cannot extricate yourself from. Articulate your point of view. The simplest way to define this is the best way to achieve whatever it is you're helping with is by your point of view. If this is something that feels really foreign, this is probably where you should start. And I just want to kind of give you an example of what this means. Let's say you're a financial coach for tattoo artists, which seems like a really cool niche, I would say. Some financial coaches for tattoo artists might say, well, the best way to solve your financial issues is by changing your relationship with money. Another one might be more focused on perhaps you need to keep better track of your expenses, more of a literal approach. But this is just kind of the direction I want you to go. Understanding what your unique point of view is on the problem is extremely helpful. It should reflect your beliefs, and it is really the foundation on which your signature system will rest. Frankly, if you just have that, your life will feel much easier. This is just sort of an illustration of how the reality of this. So a person doing the same job as somebody else, a business coach for whoever and a business coach for whoever, their unique approach and point of view may be centered around how they organize their relationships or the technical aspects of their life or their mindset or what systems they use, or they can kind of grab from everything and kind of have a more holistic approach. For you guys, you just need to figure out what category you're in. Next step, I think you guys have probably all done this to some degree or another, but what are the obstacles? What's missing? What are they lacking when they come to you? Can be a really helpful place to start. What are the barriers? What misconceptions? What do they misunderstand about their problem? So perhaps when you and I first talked, we were talking about the difficulty of getting into momentum and doing the things that you intellectually understood would be helpful in moving you forward, but weren't really having a lot of success doing. Misconception that you perhaps were experiencing was that the only way forward for you is a volume-based approach where you send 100 DMs per day and make sure that you follow up 6 times, and you have a threshold of closing success rate you're trying to hit. You might have found it more appealing to understand that there was an alternate way to go about this, which was to make decisions based on resonance, to pursue resonance ruthlessly, with the implication being that when we're in resonance with something, we already have significant amounts of motivation built in to do the thing. Most of the time, it's just allowing ourselves permission to do the step, which to me is a lot easier than like having a spreadsheet of the 100 people I contacted today. In any event, recognizing patterns, what you're seeing multiple people experience, is another really fruitful area to focus on, because it allows you to actually sort of tap in to what the people you've already worked with or even just observed have been experiencing. It's kind of more valuable data than just the stuff that we kind of churn up in our heads. So example, weight loss coaching. I feel like weight loss is a really easy example all the time, so I use it a lot, but person may be having trouble with emotional eating. They may not have considered what are the things that people are missing, misconceptions. Example would be sleep quality. Somebody could be completely missing that as a factor. And you guys all know that it's important, so I know that this is not new information for you, but for many people who might sit down with a weight loss coach at some point in time, that will blow their mind that that's even a factor. In fact, they're probably trying to beat themselves up into going to the gym after 5.5 hours because they think that's what they're supposed to do. So this is an example of just something that a person might be perceiving about their problem. Obviously, exercise is sort of a give me, but we also have, if we were to design a signature system around this, we can also do nutrition. So this is just an example of perhaps areas that a person might focus on in their signature system if they were doing weight loss. This is getting a little bit into the weeds, but also super important. Focusing on symptoms versus causes. So to the best of our ability, we want to actually focus on the underlying issues rather than symptoms. Symptoms are really good for marketing, but when we're solving problems, we want to actually understand the root cause so that a person is successful in the long term. So the distinction really is a symptom in this particular niche would be not fitting into clothes. This would be awesome stuff to focus on marketing because that's where the client is in their mind. But when you go to design the system that supports them, you're going to want to go deeper than that. Really important to have actionable steps around all of the things that you identify as barriers. A person can get totally thrown off if they do a variety of your steps, but you're missing a really key component of the problem. So when you sit down to identify their problems, don't be shy about creating a very extensive list. Often a person is just going to need 20% of your solution. But if that 20% is missing some of those critical steps, you're totally going to lose them along the way. Sort of self-explanatory, but basically what you need to do when you have problems is identify a positive action step a person could take to alleviate that. So if a person's sleep quality is crappy, what we might do is optimize the sleep environment and routine. If you really want to get excited about this, you can go even deeper and add in, if you've got kind of a large step, what are the small steps a person might want to take in order to make that an easier step? Taking note of any kind of frameworks that you might be using is a good place to put this type of information. Probably the most important thing, in my opinion, is what are the client actions that you're going to be orchestrating. If you understand the client actions, this gives you a ton of material to not only just speak on, but obviously you can start to create the resources to make that an easier process. So this can just be a really good place to focus your mind if you're looking to kind of churn out a lot of detail on your system. Sounds kind of silly, but names are important. If you've got really multiple broad categories, what you're going to want to do is try to like streamline those into like 3 pillars, kind of like we've been talking about. You also want to create a name that is compelling to what the client is actually trying to achieve. So understanding your audience in this regard can be really helpful. The fitness coaching industry, for example, is sort of rife with really, really big problems, really big promises rather. And the names are some can be sometimes outlandish. So a way that a person could think about this, not saying it's the best way, but how do you come up with something that's like really grounded and kind of understated but powerful? So a lot of people that I've talked to really seem to like the resonance revolution as a concept. So how do you create something that has that, gives that sense of compelling movement to your system? What we also want to do is make sure that we're focusing on client understanding. So we're speaking to the level that they understand. We're not naming it after a root problem that's like 7 layers down that will surely be missed as relevant to them because it's so deep. So again, even if you are more of a flexible, spontaneous coach, having a mental map will allow you to make better decisions about where to focus attention if for some reason you get a little bit lost with what you're up to. It's also going to help you diagnose what needs attention based on the client challenges that are coming up. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, you can tell when people are starting to skip steps. This allows you to just much more effectively intervene on their behalf, rather than, on the other hand, going like 4 coaching sessions and this person is just kind of spiraling. Also, makes a very having this framework allows you to actually explain why you're doing such and such thing, allowing them to feel held by what's going on, which again is to me incredibly important just in creating an experience where somebody can relax a little bit. Structure, flexibility, that's always kind of the question with something like this. I think what you're going to find is that you don't have too much of a risk of becoming overly structured at this point, because a lot of this you're going to generate as you start working with folks. And it's not, in other words, what I would not encourage you to do is map out every single week of a 10-week program in extreme detail, because most likely at least 50% of that you're going to realize is not going to work once you're actually in the thing. So in terms of running it, you're going to have a signature system, but somebody's going to come and say, well, I'd really like to talk about this because it's really actually getting in the way of my success. That's totally fine. Again, this really just provides you with that touchstone so that you always understand what you're doing, the client understands what they're doing, and you're able to actually make intelligent pivots and decisions. One thing I thought might be useful is just to talk about what it's like creating a system for somebody who's really advanced, or a group of people who are really advanced, versus those who are in more of a beginner phase. So typically what we'll see is that folks at the beginning, we'll use the example of leadership. If somebody is really new to principles of leadership, what they're likely going to want is a lot more structure and guidance and teaching. As they ascend to something that's more advanced, they're going to value collaboration and customization more. So this is just something to think about as, again, you look at the niche. Are you working with folks who are more on the beginning side or more advanced? Because what they're going to enjoy responding to is going to be a little bit different. Really important, once you have this thing going, making sure you're getting some feedback. So you can formalize this process with forms, check-in conversations, end of the program review if you're doing it that way, getting some metrics on what's working, and hopefully having some clients who say like, well, in week 4 we did this and that was like really stupid and I didn't like it. Really helpful. This just allows you, obviously, to make decisions based on the evidence that you're accumulating and not be sort of pivoting client to client, right? Testing. So you can do this on an individual basis. I don't really recommend it because it will take you a very long time to test your system if you just go one person by one person. Super easy to test this in groups. That's what I, have you guys are experiencing now. Much more efficient, allows you to get more data more quickly and actually identify common patterns. Sort of self-explanatory, but your first version is A, not going to be perfect, and B, likely is going to look different after 6 months, and that's okay. Also, just be aware if you're doing something in your system that actually just feels like it's not working, you don't have to wait for somebody to give you feedback on that. So trust your judgment as you're playing these things out and allow yourself to use the feedback that you might be getting implicitly to make decisions about what you're including. Again, this is something that you can extrapolate into speaking, courses, workshops, whatever you want to do with it. What it really comes down to, again, is your point of view. If you take away anything, I'm going to say it like the third time, point of view on the problem that you're trying to solve, such that it brings some people in and repels other people. Don't leave them in the maybe zone. That's not nice. So, starting with your philosophy, mapping out what happens, figuring out what the obstacles are, naming. What does this all mean for where you're at? Niche, point of view. That's really where I would focus. That point of view alone is going to give you so much greater ability to focus on what you're doing. If you don't allow yourself to have a point of view, what you're essentially forcing yourself to do is be non-discriminate about all of the information that you're taking in day-to-day basis that could actually help you, but you're unable to filter it correctly because you're not allowing yourself to have that point of view. So that's what I got for signature systems. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question,
Yeah.
not necessarily on all this stuff, because that's a lot I need to chew on, but kind of circling back to what Hunter was saying in the beginning about not having time.
Mm-hmm.
Last week in my program, we just added the not digital sunset, but shutdown complete.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to time and like, what's your opinion on shutdown complete versus like trying to fit in getting this stuff done if the rest of our day's kind of been filled with other things?
So are you talking about in the heroic you installed shutdown complete?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So what I would say, so have you been, I know that this is sort of something you're pretty comfortable with, but the connecting to purpose protocol, you feel good about that particular area, right? In terms of actually like gathering and documenting what's coming out of that, how is that going?
Haven't started since we talked about it.
Okay. So probably where I would start is there. What this means in practical terms is adding 5 minutes or so after you do your that level of connection to documenting and putting it in a place where you can reasonably take action. The other thing that I would really just encourage everybody to think about, regardless of where you're at, none of this is meant to be like I'm sending you to like a second job or like school. This is really something that I would love to see you guys spend maybe 15 minutes a day on. Um, 15 enthusiastic minutes are going to give you way more than you think they will. Is that something that's achievable or is that not achievable?
Totally achievable.
Okay. That's where I would start then. Um, if it were me, like, and don't feel like you have to use my language, but I would put a target in my protocol that says 15 enthusiastic minutes. First of all, so you can track it and like it doesn't, I know that after 4 days of life, we forget what we talk about and, it kind of just falls to the side. But so you can I loved, Hunter, you talked about tagging things like kinesthetically, emotionally last time. The using the app allows that process to happen consistently, which is kind of a gold mine. If you stop and think about the possibility that you can like really catalog and tag that without a lot of effort. So, in whatever words feel like they speak to you, just that you're getting that target. I wouldn't put it in your top three, but put it in your 4, 5, 6. So it doesn't fall off the radar, but it's not like a ton of pressure either.
Mm.
How does that feel in terms of
I
a
could,
place to start?
yeah, I could do that. I'm curious why, is it just a pressure thing of why you don't want it to be top three for us?
Yes. So if you feel like that will stretch you in a good way, totally feel free. What I'm seeking to avoid is that somebody stops tracking their stuff because they see themselves not closing the gap, and then our instinct is to like turn away. So I want to keep it like in your mind without it feeling like if I don't do this, something bad is going to happen. Because I've talked to a lot of people, and there's a lot of like what I feel is not super healthy thinking around the use of the app. Like it's very black and white and creates anxiety,
Hmm.
you know. So I don't want to put anyone in that or fuel that for anybody, um, because I think it's a huge opportunity if we can kind of approach it without all that. So if you feel like it would be beneficial to put it in the top three, definitely do. I just don't want to fuel anybody's anxiety about the app.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Of course. Anybody else?
I think this
That's
is
something
covered
noteworthy to
in
find it. I'm sorry, go on, Casey.
I was just going to say, I think this is covered in that strategy session, but you mentioned the client perception versus reality piece and symptoms versus causes.
Mhm.
And I think it's actually been a fun exercise in some ways to like try and intuit that as I'm like putting thought into the point of view, and like, you know, you might think that this is what you're feeling, but really this is what's at the root of it. Like, I guess, I don't know, I've just been thinking in my life, where are there opportunities without annoying people, I guess, but where are there opportunities to like surface this thing that I'm passionate about and ask questions that get at the root of the problem? Um, you know, maybe it's actually with potential prospects, but at least right now, I'm not like in a place where I feel ready to start setting up those conversations. But you know, because my my niche is like people at my stage of life and, you know, that are somewhat similar to me, I guess. I have interactions with those people, men, young men, and I'm just wondering, like, if as you are building yours, what your sort of informal validation, like market validation process was. And I
Yeah,
use market validation very, like, you know, that's overly formal, but just like testing ideas with the people that are already in your life and open to giving feedback.
yeah. I'll be honest with you. I understand the temptation to like try to glean from people who might be kind of close.
Mm,
And I would say I got like marginal
mm,
clarification from that process. I reached out to just people that I thought would be a good match and like had I don't know how I can look back and tell you the language that I used to kind of bring them into this kind of no, it wasn't even a strings attached. I think I even framed it up as market research, but I'll double check. Got some useful stuff from that, but you're going to get your most useful stuff from actually having people in the program. So it becomes different when somebody is actually there because they want what you're talking about. What I found was that I was talking to people who kind of met the general demographics, but they didn't have much of a desire around the specific thing that I was giving. So I didn't find their feedback to be as useful as you might think. Something about having somebody who actually wants that thing creates a situation where they can give you much more valuable feedback. So what I would say is if your offer document looks like my first one in terms of depth, you're probably where you need to be. I might even start looking at the strategy session invite module and drafting how you could invite folks into those conversations. But tell me what you think.
Yeah, I think I need to take the leap. I think it's like I feel like I probably had all the conversations I can have with what I would call like friendlies,
Yeah.
people in my inner circle that like are interested in this stuff, but not necessarily like people that I would work with. They're like, that sounds great. Like, have you thought about this? Which, yeah, it's marginally helpful, but like, if they're not in a place where they're like, I want that, I want to be a co-creative like recipient of that, then I just need to take the leap to like people I don't know. And yeah, I think it's another version of sort of creative distraction potentially.
Yeah. and so I'll look, I will, how did I, because I remember the conversations. I'll look back and see what I did in terms of language, but I kind of agree it may not be the best use of your however many minutes you were planning on devoting to that.
Yeah. 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 I think V1, like good enough offer and like strategy session, and then just start is what I need to do.
Well, what I want to say is it's going to be much more fun. Honestly, I didn't really, when I was on those calls, and just sort of, I love these people as people, but like, since they didn't really feel like that was a real need for them, it wasn't the engagement that I think you're probably looking for.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, I think I should do market research, so I will do that.
Right. Right.
That makes sense.
Thanks.
Most welcome. I want to actually go back to OJ for a second, because your specific question was on digital shutdown. And I don't think I addressed that super well. And I would like to, if that's okay. So this actually came up a week or so ago, but like people were getting a lot of inspiration after bedtime. And I do just really want to iterate that, like, I think you have a pretty consistent protocol around tapping inspiration. This may not be as big of an issue for you. Your challenge is more around documenting an action. But sometimes when we start bringing larger amounts of inspiration into our lives, we get creative use interruptions at times that are not convenient, such as after digital sunset, or you walked into this room to do this thing and you like got struck by a great idea. Do I go back and write it down, or do I do the thing? One of the things that's been really useful to me is to honor the fact that I'm getting struck by inspiration. even if it is mildly inconvenient. Obviously, if you're like about to get married, you probably can't just be like, oh, well, I gotta go spend 15 minutes with my insight, right? So this is nuanced, but celebrating that is even, being presented to you, and realizing a lot of the time the follow-up work to document and even take a first step only takes a couple of minutes. So if it's if you're like wiped out for the day, like look, and really can't organize yourself around anything, much less like getting major movement on a piece of inspiration, obviously let it go. But like if you have the space to develop that inspiration for 5 minutes, at least for me, I typically will. I don't necessarily, there are some rules. I don't go online and start endless researching and like go on some YouTube rabbit hole, but any little offline stuff that I can accomplish in that area that I'm being pushed so that I can let it go, my mind can drop it, and I can move on. For me has actually just been a practice that I had to get used to because I can be a little rigid at times about protocols and things. But the follow through of that 5 minutes has often been very critical to my progression. And if I do that all day, if I get 10 major flashes of insight in a day that I document and follow up on, I don't even have to think about what I need to do next, which is like a whole other awesome thing, right? Half the time we get kind of into paralysis because we don't know what to do next. If I simply just take all that stuff and follow it through, I don't even have to worry about it anymore. Does that answer kind of the digital sunset thing?
Yeah, that was exactly what I needed. Because there's times where, like, I do jujitsu at night oftentimes, and sometimes after, it's like the brain's free to just play.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. That happens to me too sometimes. What I will say is the more adept I get at chasing the inspiration during the day, the less that happens. So it's almost like it gets diverted in a more convenient way if I allow myself to do that during the day. So as you more consistently routinize this behavior, you will probably see a reduction in the like spurts in the evening. That being said, kinesthetic is your thing. So that's going to give you some extra activation, just by virtue of the behavior, but it's definitely manageable. I do, gonna talk about again, bath at night. These usually get my wheels going. It's the heat and the water or whatever. But if I'm good about collecting all of the insight and things that are coming up for me during the day, more often than not, I can get through the bath without having any major insight that I must follow up on. But if I leave it all day and then at night I do the thing that activates me, it's just gonna be like, makes sense.
Yes. Thank you.
Most welcome. Anybody else? If not, I have just one other thing and then I'll let you guys drop. If you have to drop now, that's fine too, obviously, but I'm gonna show you this real quick. So, OJ, this is definitely listen with your body, not has to do right now, but for the rest of you, just stuff to think about this week. Overachievement. The philosopher's note This is where it's discussed about Bill Russell throwing up before the big game, and that was sort of the reverse indicator. So just a reminder, keep an eyeball on your reverse indicator target. Take a look back at the previous weeks. What is outstanding that you guys might have some space to take on this week? If you want extra accountability, feel free to post that in the Mighty. Couple of targets. I know some people already put speed as a force in there, but if you don't have speed as a force target in your protocol, think about that. Also, a target around astonishing or outperforming your contract. So last week we talked about what it means to, have these bonuses, for example, that really astonish a person. Having that as part of your behavior, normal behavior, not just like, oh, I'm creating an offer and I want to kind of entice people, but like normal behavior is astonishment. That will really make, really concretize your ability to be in abundance day to day to day. Also want you guys to think about installing a target. Doesn't have to be called this, but think away from your desk. So get out from behind your desk, do some thinking. Doesn't have to be anything major, but one of the things that will literally just kind of kill us, if not us, probably not us, but our creativity and our ability to do this sustainably, is to have this algorithm in our mind where we have to sit down and do really creative work on cue, right? Allowing yourself to do some of that important thinking, chewing away from your desk. It's just something to help you move in that direction and away from a rigid sit down, churn out the creative thing, which can feel overwhelming, drawing a lot of blanks, get nowhere, frustrated, and then don't look at it for 3 weeks. If you haven't already, vision and terms in the offer document. If you haven't already, what is the quest that you are on with your people? Something to think about. You can do, again, please don't spend more than 15 minutes on this, but what are the 3 things that you're optimizing in clients' lives? Try to make the connection to how those interact with why a person would buy. So an example would be, I am optimizing somebody's leverage, flow, and identity. This is related to their ability to save time standing up their coaching business. So what are you guys optimizing for? Just something to kind of get clear on. This can be sort of a in-between step between the full-blown signature system and just having an understanding of the mechanics that you're doing with clients. Anybody have any questions? I'm thinking no. Anyone have questions, thoughts, or anything else that they want to throw in before we jump?
For Wednesday, is there a particular focus, or I don't know?
Yeah, so we're going to be basically talking about the mechanics of your vision, your terms, and what you're optimizing.
Perfect. Need that accountability.
Of course. Anybody else?
My head is super empty today, so no.
That happens. You should have seen me trying to talk to OJ last week. I felt like I was literally in left field. It was very bizarre.
Oh
I
my
do
goodness.
apologize for that. Holy moly. Apparently, this is what happens to my brain when I get super sick. I was like questioning who I was and what I was doing. I was like looking up later. I was like, how long does it take to get better from pneumonia? And I was like, a month. And I was like, no, that's not. Like most people, apparently 60 or so percent of people are still having cough and fatigue after a month. And I was like, wow, that's pretty
Wild.
a lot. But anyway, getting back to normal here.
Glad you're feeling better.
Yeah.
And I owe you, Casey, a reschedule link.
Good.
This was on the same day that I was in the left field, so I do
No
apologize.
worries at all. No worries at all.
Also, I think I'm going to send you a link specific because there's a link out there that I sent at one point in time to I think everybody, and it isn't putting the appointment on my calendar.
Mm.
So use the link I send you because I think that might have been what happened last week because it actually wasn't on my calendar, and I was like, okay. And that's when I figured out the link problem. But
No worries.
anybody else? Thoughts? All right, I'm going to close you guys out, but let's go around real quick. What's the ambiance essence that you're looking to create in the afternoon for yourselves? One word. I'm going for joyful.
This shouldn't take this long.
Gentle discipline.
Okay.
Is that hyphenated to make it one word? Gentle discipline.
Definitely. It's a hashtag, so one word.
Mine's self-compassion, shared humanity.
Yeah.
Refinement.
All right. I like that.
Nice.
That is a very specific word. I like that. All right, guys. If you guys want feedback on anything, please just give me a message in whatever way is most convenient for you. And I will see you Wednesday.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good week, everyone.
I know.
See you later.